Hey, Dave, how you doing?
Good morning. How you doing?
Doing all right. Yeah, I hope those numbers didn't scare you or anything like that as you start teaching that next generation of truck drivers. But the numbers are real, and it's it's something that all of the kids and not just the kids, anybody beginning a new business, an owner operator business, boy, they just have to know their numbers.
Yeah, they have to be aware of the market and how volatile it can be and how it will affect your decisions as you move forward into this business. And whether you're under a company driver or whether you're an owner operator or you're a you're a lease operator, it just depends on how you're going to manage in the business and what you're intending on doing. But Dave, let's get to you. Let's get to what you do and how exciting what it is you do for what's coming up in the future. And that's really what we're talking about here is the future of trucking, right?
It is. So I'm actually the truck driving instructor and coordinator at Patterson High School, located in Patterson, California. So we launched our program 5 years ago, part of a larger supply chain and logistics management program. So our school actually offers warehousing and forklift certification for our students.
Wow, that's incredibly interesting, knowing that there is other solutions out there than that second business, right? That second deal. So tell us how you got involved in it. I'm interested in your story behind this.
Oh my gosh, how much time do we have?
Let's go. We'll tell you, we'll just shut you off when we're done, so just keep going.
Well, right on. So actually, I started off driving in 1988. And I was never on a path to college. I struggled a lot academically in school. But it was really interesting. Once I went to truck driving school, and I went from being a DF student to an A student, I kind of realized I'm not stupid. I just didn't care in high school. And I see so many young people today that are going through the educational system who plainly just don't care. And it's really kind of our fault because we don't give them anything to care about. So I ended up driving for a while. I used trucking to pay my way through college. And then once I graduated with a business degree, went back into trucking. And I was heading into more of a management position. And that's when I was actually called into teaching. And of all things, I became an elementary school teacher. But I never left trucking. Trucking was always something that stayed with me. I would drive during the summers or on weekends. And then in 2006, I started a nonprofit truck driving school ministry called Faith Logistics. And I would work with people that were coming out of the prison systems, and I would teach them how to drive a truck for free. And we did that for 10 summers until a wonderful organization called the California Air Resource Board. They deemed all of our equipment non-compliant. So in 2016, we dissolved the nonprofit. And that's when I actually brought the idea to Patterson High School. And we've been doing the trucking program here for 5 years.
Hey, talk to us a little bit about that curriculum that you're teaching at Patterson High School.
You know what? The great thing about doing a high school program is that I'm not about flipping seats, right? It's like I have no incentive as far as how many people that go through the program. My goal is that the people that leave the program have the right mindset. They're a good fit for trucking, and they're focused on safety. And so we're able to incorporate a lot of different forms of curriculums that maybe some other truck driving schools, they just don't have the time for. So we take a more of a holistic approach to trucking. We want our students to have long, healthy careers. So we incorporated a program, it's called WorkLead, that teaches the proper way to perform industry-specific body movements to reduce workplace injuries. These are things that no one ever taught me, the proper way to open the hood, enter the trailer, pull the fifth wheel pin. And we want to make sure that, that the students that go through the program don't end up with those workman comp claims. We piloted a new program this year through the Trucking Fitness Company. And this really is about how do you teach somebody how to live healthy on the road? How do you make good, healthy food choices? How do you actually exercise when you don't have access to a gym? And we want our students to have a foundation that they can kind of fall back to once they start driving. And I think this is so meaningful because if you look at some of the numbers regarding health and truck drivers, it's not good. And it's heading the wrong direction. We read that truck drivers have a life expectancy 16 years less than the average American. 86% are considered obese. And we want to make sure our students are actually have a realistic view of what trucking is, but then prepare them so they can have a long, healthy career.
I'm curious, and you talked about it. I think it's fascinating, not only the health of the driver and how to do things but I want to go to the students, because this is really where I find it most interesting. How are you engaging these students that don't care? How do you create that moment of care in your classroom?
That's a great question, and I didn't realize the impact we were having on students until that first year. And I had a parent that came to me one day after school, and he said, "I'm here to shake your hand." And I'm like, "For what?" And he said, "For saving my son." And I'm like, "I don't understand." And he said, "Well, before my son Javier took your trucking class, he was on a path of self-destruction. He was mixed up in gang violence and drug dealing. And for the first time in his life, in a long time, he feels that he has worth and he has value." And I think what I realize is that what we created here, we're a non-traditional classroom. It's not like somebody comes in every day, they sit at a desk and they're stuck there, and we test them every Friday. This is a very hands-on, interactive class. It's hands-on learning, and then they're able to actually build relationships with people in the trucking industry. So we have a lot of guest speakers that come in. They hear other people's stories, and they can kind of see themselves in someone else, so to speak, and that gives them hope. And so, we have the field trips, the guest speakers, and they just feel. I want them to feel connected to the industry, because that's what makes this industry so great, are the people.
Wow, yeah, you bring up a lot of great points, and I'm going to tell you, just hearing what I've heard so far, Dave, this is actually a segment I could listen to probably for hours. This is a heart and soul of the same thing we do, because I love what you do, because these kids, and I am going to say the kids right now, because they've got to learn how to do it the right way. Last thing we want them to do is to go out and start learning bad habits from companies that maybe aren't as safe or don't do it the right way. It's important that they see it from you, hear it the way it's supposed to happen, so when they go out there in the real world and they don't see the same thing, they leave. They go find a place that cares. And I just love what you're doing out here, because we've got to make sure, no matter what, that these kids, that they don't just go to college to go to college. They find their passion in life and create some success in them. Talk to me outside of just truck driving. Do you have simulators as well, or are they just hopping in the truck day one?
No, so our focus is on, we don't do the behind the wheel training here. Our focus is on the entry-level driver train standards. So we teach the theory portion, but we do it with a hands-on perspective. So we do have 2 driving simulators. They're from Advanced Training Systems. And what's great about the simulators is that it's able to break down those skills one at a time. And so when we still teach our students how to shift, even, I see we're kind of moving away from that. It's important that these students have that skill set, and I don't want my students to have a restricted license. But it breaks down those skills one at a time, and all those skills are transferable. So when I do put them into that truck for the first time, it's based on muscle memory, and so they're not quite as overwhelmed, and they're able to. It definitely makes for a much safer transition than just taking somebody day one, putting them into a truck.
Do you find that the technology that you provide is a kind of a magnet toward the students? They tend to draw to that a little bit better, more accepting, understanding, and able to deal with some of that new technology as opposed to me getting in there. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Not fresh or new.
Oh, totally. In fact, we do a lot of tours for other schools that come through, and literally, as soon as they walk in the classroom door, it's a magnet, as you said. That's what grabs their attention. But once I get their attention, and we actually use that as a training tool, that's where it really comes into play. And I would never train again without a simulator. There's so much I can do on the simulator that I can't teach in real life. Like, how do you teach somebody how to respond to a front tire blowout? Yeah. That's all based on reaction, not thinking. And if you don't react the right way, you're going to kill yourself or somebody else.
Go ahead, Rick.
I want to hear, and I know it's one of the last questions we had here for you. We don't have to end it here, but I do want to hear your hopes and your aspirations, because, man, everything I'm hearing from you, again, I'm a huge fan already. It's something to me. I hope this is what's going to come out, that you want to take it across the country and open up other schools in other states. But talk to me. Tell me what your vision is for this.
Yeah, so you brought up that word earlier about passion. And right now, the average age of somebody entering into trucking is 38 years old, right? So you kind of think about what's going on in that person's life at the age of 38. Probably a spouse, a house payment, a car payment. So why are they now just picking trucking as a second or third career choice? Well, they hear because you make a lot of money in trucking, right? But I look at it this way. How different would our industry look and feel if people picked trucking as a first career choice? Because when I grew up, the people I looked up to, my uncles that were truck drivers, they had a passion for driving. When I got into trucking, I have a passion for driving. I still have a passion for driving. I went back and drove this last summer, not because I had to, because I wanted to. And I was able to use that money to apply to a nonprofit that we started. So about 2 years ago, I was approached by, her name's Lindsay Trent. She was working for Ryder in Kentucky. And she heard about the program here in Patterson, and she's like, well, what's being done? What's the solution? And we kind of came up with this idea of starting a nonprofit business trade association called the Next Generation in Trucking Association. And what we're trying to do is help kind of unify the industry, so to speak. What we feel is that we have an industry problem, but it deserves an industry solution, right? And if we all kind of start pulling our resources together, what we can do is, number one, start educating young people, because most people going through the educational system today are never exposed to trucking or any vocational trade for that matter. They're kind of on a singular path. They're being told that if you want to be successful, you have to go to college, and that's not true. And so what we want to do is, number one, help educate, and we're actually creating a toolkit that can go out to schools and people in the industry that can actually go into the school systems and teach a one-day class on the trucking industry. And then we want to back that up with opportunities. And that's what we're going to be doing, is actually replicating the Patterson program, the curriculum, so to speak. And so since July, we've already worked with over 55 high schools from across the U.S. that are interested in starting a high school trucking program. And not everyone who signs up to take the trucking class is going to get a Class A license, and that's okay. We want to provide the education part first, and some people, after they take the class, they realize trucking's not a good fit for them, because there is a lot of personal responsibility, a lot of liability that comes with having a Class A license. And some people, regardless if you're 18 or 40, you're not ready for that. And so, we want to provide those opportunities, though, for people to explore trucking.
I'll tell you what, as you continue to talk to young people and you expose them to a part of the industry, it really exposes them to the entire part of the industry across the board. I mean, and there's so many other jobs within the industry, not just driving a truck. I think it's fascinating because you're creating that environment of knowledge and wealth to go out and make better decisions, or even first-time decisions in this industry. I'll tell you what, you brought up something very important at the first of the interview, and I think it hits home to what we do here at BCB Live, and that's safety. And I'll tell you, the fundamental principle behind our show is to get the word out, the passion for safety, the desire to make it better and to move it forward in this industry for us all, because it can only benefit every single one of us if we do it more and we do it right. I like the idea that when you first came in, you talked about safety. If you would, talk about safety and how important it is in the classroom when it comes to talking about trucking.
It is extremely important, because we need to give them a realistic view of what trucking really is. And so every day we start off with something we call it our daily updates. What are the top 4 or 5 hot topics in the industry? And some are tech related, some are more business related, but a lot of them are based on accidents that are making national news, and we try to look at those and we start trying to dissect them and find out what's the root cause. And it gives them something to think about, just not only when they're thinking about becoming a Class A driver, but in their life in general. How do they perceive driving in general when they're out there in their Class C? We want them to have a better awareness, because sometimes you get in that truck and you're desensitized because it rides so nice, and you got a nice stereo system, and it's all the comforts, but really you got 80,000 pounds going down the road at 55 miles per hour, and that's a rolling bomb. And so we just want to give them a realistic view of what is trucking all about, and to make sure that every action decision they make is going to have a consequence.
David, when BCB Live, it stands for Be Safe, Communicate, and if you can, be on time. We stress the safety first, the making sure that we're protecting life when we're out there on the road. That's the most important thing we have. You know, being on time, that's a priority. I also want to take a moment here, because what you're doing, and I'm sure this is part of it, but what you're doing is recruiting at a younger age than what we're doing today. You know, what we as an industry, where we really need to focus in on, and I think you're doing it, is talking to the junior high students, the high school students, introducing them to trucking. Because if we wait until they're 30 or 35 or 28, they don't get it until they're 38 years old. We've got to do a better job of recruiting, much like college sports do the same thing, right?
Yeah, you go out and you get your star players early, right? You go out and you find who you want and who you need. If you're going to be really good at any game or any business, you go early, you find early, you recruit early. And I think you're doing a fantastic job of providing that foundation of recruiting and knowledge of the industry. Man, it is fascinating to know what you're doing. I'm excited about what you're doing across the country.
I want to make sure that you know this, that, you know, if you need help, you want a couple of folks to talk to your students about safety, to get them involved in what we do, we're right here for you. Love what you're doing. Phenomenal job, Dave.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. And like I say, one of the things we're doing besides that seed planning and is really how do we kind of connect with people who never thought about trucking. So last year I did a pilot program with a company called Job Behaviors. And what this is actually it's called a predictive assessment based on 487 attributes of a professional truck driver. So it's very scientific. So I tested 135 11th graders last year. And anyone who scored at the upper end, I personally contacted. And I basically said this, you know, based on the assessment, you have the attributes, I can give you the skills. And I want to invite you to sign up for the trucking class next year. Because I did that, 35% of the students who are enrolled in the trucking class this year are students who have a 4.0 GPA. So now I have some of the top students in the entire school are now taking a truck driving class, which I think is awesome, right?
Unbelievable.
Now, what's really neat is that they've all come to me this year and they said, hey, Mr. Dein, I'm still on a path to college. And I said, that's fine. That's great. Good for you. But they want to use their Class A license to help pay their way through college. And they said that once they get their degrees in whatever, engineering, computer science management, they want to come back to the industry because now they have a passion for the trucking industry. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great, because we just don't want the best person behind the wheel. We want the best people throughout the industry. And what a great way about getting more people to even consider the trucking industry.
Wow, what a great idea, and a great way to apply that idea to the kids out there and the people that we're going to make a difference in the future in what we do here. I'll tell you what, we've run out of time, Dave. If you would, I ask every guest before they leave if they'll state their name, who they're with, and say, hey, and you're watching BCB Live, the safest station in the nation. Can you do that for me?
I sure will. Hey, this is Dave Dein with Next Generation of Trucking Association, Patterson High School. And I'm watching BCB Live, the safest station in the nation.
All right.
Hey,
Thanks
appreciate you. Great job, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.